to the 2020 Storytellers Symposium. I hope everyone is excited. I hope you are all ready for what is sure to be a fantastic night. My name is Lena, and I have the wonderful pleasure of being part of Plan International Canada's youth engagement team. For those who have never attended a Plan International Canada function event before, be it virtual or in person, welcome. And to those who have been with us at one of our events before, be it in person or virtual, welcome back. So Storyteller Symposium is always a special occasion, and it's a time for the phenomenal young people in Plan International Canada's youth programs to showcase what they've been working on and learning throughout the year. This year, we are incredibly excited to invite 10 incredible young people to share their experiences and thoughts through speeches, songs, artwork, and poetry. It is vital that we acknowledge the prevalent anti-Black racism and discrimination that has been highlighted by recent events here in Canada and in the United States. This racism is not new, and it is a problem here in Canada, and it is a global problem as well. It is a product of years of systemic oppression and discrimination against the Black community, and that has been perpetuated in turn by years of societal inaction. It's crucial that each and every one of us stand in solidarity with the Black community, acknowledge the continued injustices that Black people continue to face, and make a commitment to advocating for meaningful long-term change. With that, to start our night, I would like to welcome Denise, an alumni of both the Speakers Bureau and Girls Belong Here initiatives, to share one of her poems.
Thank you, Lena. This poem I'll be sharing with you guys is called If You Should Outlive Me. If you should outlive me, let no one up at the podium refer to me simply as a nice girl. Tell them I had a fire in my belly that still burns bright. Tell them I was passionate, courageous, and always ready for a fight. Snatch the mic out of their hands if they define me by the curve of my hips or the pout in my lips. Tell them I had fangs, sunk my teeth into flesh, sought the truth with every tooth, brazen and bold down to the root. Tell them I was flawed, stubborn, had a chip on my shoulder, moved through life year after year, bolder and bolder. Tell them I was sad, could cry myself a whole river, baptized in my own tears, would make myself reborn. Tell them I was a basket case full of fear, a drama queen to the core. If you should outlive me, tell the world of all my colors, all my fight. If you should outlive me, tell my story right.
Thank you so much for sharing those incredibly powerful words with us, Denise. At this time, I would like to invite everybody here today and those viewing the live stream to join us in a moment of silence and solidarity with the global movement to end anti-Black racism.
With thousands all over the country mobilizing to fight anti-Black racism and discrimination, we stand in solidarity with the Black community, our youth, colleagues, friends, family, and neighbors. But standing in solidarity is just the first step. We know that we have a responsibility to do more, to recognize the lived experiences of the Black community, unpack our privilege, and understand how we can do better. Welcome to the Storytellers Symposium. My name is Jennifer Fry. I'm the Vice President of Communications and Public Engagement at Plan International Canada. And my pronouns are she and her. A moment ago, we encouraged you to hold yourself accountable, to commit to change. We are committing to this work and to becoming a better ally. At Plan, we're committed to learning and understanding how we can best support the Black community and begin to dismantle the anti-Black racist systems of oppression and discrimination that exist here in Canada and around the world. We recognize that we are not experts in this work, and we're committed to using our platforms, including the Storytellers Symposium, to recognize and reflect on this issue in an authentic, transparent, and meaningful way. As a human rights-based organization, Plan International Canada champions the rights of every person regardless of age, color, race, religion, caste, ethnicity, gender, and sexuality. Inclusivity, respecting and appreciating all people and differences is one of our core values. Our development and humanitarian programming globally reflects these principles. However, while we've been at it for over 80 years, the international development sector, including ourselves, have barely scratched the surface of deep-rooted problems, including anti-Black racism, that have been created over centuries. We have a long way to go. As we continue this journey, we know that we will not be perfect, and we'll strive to be better. We may misstep or fall short, and we will always remain open to learning. I feel very fortunate to work for an organization whose core focus is eliminating injustice and protecting human rights. Our hope is that in our journey ahead, we can ensure that this mission, along with our values and principles, are fully realized. We know this work is not easy, and we are committed to doing it because we recognize the role we play in making our world a better, safer, and more equitable place for Black people around the world. We must begin by giving space for Black voices and representing the dignity and sanctity of Black lives. And it begins with listening with a radical empathy. In fact, the act of listening has never been more critical. To quote Michelle Obama, "There is power in allowing yourself to be known and heard, in owning your unique story and using your authentic voice. And there's grace in being willing to know and hear others. This, for me, is how we become," end of quote. I love that quote because it's not just about sharing your story, it's about listening to the stories of others as well. Listening to the stories like that, the one that Denise just presented so graciously and bravely a few moments ago. I think that we can all agree we are living through an unprecedented moment marked by loss, challenge, and uncertainty. In this reality, it can be easy to feel hopeless or as if you have no power, but nothing can take away the power each of us have. And one way to hold and harness that power is through simply showing up and sharing your stories. I'm incredibly proud of all the young people who are sharing their art, their stories, their voice, and their energy with us this evening. Pandemic or no pandemic, Plan International Canada was committed to providing space for youth to share their stories and to grow as global citizens. And we're thrilled to be able to be hosting this event digitally. So it is my honor to welcome you all this evening, albeit virtually, for what has become one of my favorite moments of the year. And if ever there was a year that needed a moment for sharing stories, amplifying voices, and empathetic listening, this is it. On that hopeful note, I'd like to introduce and throw it over to one of our incredible youth ambassadors, Cassandra, who will be our MC this evening.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cassandra, and I have the honor of being the MC for this year's Storytellers Symposium. I would like to start off by acknowledging that I'm connecting with you today from the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe people in the Williams Treaty and Treaty 13 area. We are all connecting from different places. However, we must remember that we are all on Indigenous unceded territory. For me, I want to recognize the privilege that I hold as a cis white settler and recognize that I live and work on unceded territory or stolen land. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank the Indigenous people who caretook the land in order for my parents to immigrate here. Land acknowledgements have become much more mainstream and have often lost their meaning to being denounced, that of a political checklist. Settlers on this land need to do more than not only just acknowledging the land that they're on and the privilege that we have to be here. We must also acknowledge the violence and genocide that has been happening on these lands in order for us to truly engage in land acknowledgement and reconciliation. In the colonized state of Canada, settlers have written history books, have set narratives, and have arranged systems across the country to benefit themselves and further marginalize, oppress, assimilate, and eliminate Indigenous people. Settlers like to place these realities as being in the past through genocidal measures like the residential school system, the PASS system, the 60s scoop, the reserve system, and the Inuit High Arctic program, amongst others. This list does not stop. This list of genocidal acts continues to this day. On these lands, Indigenous women are going missing daily across the country without any justice or reconciliation. Indigenous women are being sterilized. They are not being given access to clean water and quality education systems on reserves. And they're being subjected to environmental racism and loss of land, being systematically forced into poverty, and being disproportionately incarcerated and targeted by the police and justice system, amongst others. Canada likes to pride itself on being an inclusive and safe country for all. However, as outlined earlier, this is not the case for many communities throughout the country, including those on Indigenous land. Last week, Chantel Moore, a member of the Kalawati First Nation, was killed by police officers during a wellness check. This is yet another example of how Indigenous people continue to face horrific discrimination. We must acknowledge that this was a continued act of genocide against Indigenous people and that systemic institutions allow for this behavior to happen. We are also seeing this with the investigation of the Toronto Police Services on the death of Regis Kurtinsky-Paquette as an Afro-Indigenous woman. These outlined examples do not need to be the reality. It is important that we continue to recognize this reality and join the fight against systemic racism that is felt across this country. Canada and those who have settled on this land can no longer turn a blind eye to the injustice that Indigenous people face on the lands that we now take for granted. As outlined by the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, we must have an awareness of the past, acknowledge the harm that has been done, work to make amends, and act to change this behavior. I'm calling on all of you to actively work on truth and reconciliation in your own lives, communities, and families, to enact change, to address these systemic barriers, and to continue to perpetuate colonialism on those Indigenous to Turtle Island. There are resources that are being shared in the chat in order for you to take action, to take a pledge, or to read more on some of the aspects that I've brought up today, and I encourage you all to do so. I'd like to thank Play International Canada for providing me the opportunity to MC tonight's event. I have been a Play International Canada youth for about 4 years now, and I started about 4 years ago in the Speakers Bureau as a first-year social work student who was new to the big city of Toronto and advocacy. Throughout my time in the Speakers Bureau, I was able to connect and learn alongside plan staff and other youth around topics concerning gender equality and international development. After a year on the Speakers Bureau, I applied to be a Change the Birth Story youth advocate for maternal, newborn, and child health, alongside sexual and reproductive health and rights. I was successful and found a passion and advocacy through reproductive justice in the broad field that is social work. After discovering this, I started tailoring my education and extracurricular advocacy work around gender and reproductive rights. I was a speaker at this exact same event 2 years ago, where I spoke on the importance of youth voices in movements. Soon after, I was selected to attend the Commission on the Status of Women at the United Nations headquarters in New York, alongside 3 other Change the Birth Story youth advocates. We got to understand and watch governance concerning gender equality firsthand. After my first year with the youth advocates, I felt like I had learned a lot of information about these areas of health and gained a diverse set of skills when collecting 500 endorsements through the public outreach that I wanted to share with others. As a result, I applied to be a mentor with the program and was successful and was able to work alongside 3 other amazing and aspiring youth advocates as their mentor. Last summer, my journey with Plan culminated in a summer internship on the youth engagement team. This position taught me so much about NGOs and the inner workings of programming. Through this position, I was able to create and facilitate workshops, work on menstrual hygiene day pieces, and help plan and facilitate last year's youth summit. I have learned so much from other youth, staff, and supporters of Plan, and would not be where I am today without them. Plan has helped me grow into the woman that I am today, and I hope that everyone on this call is able to have the same positive experiences that I have. We have a really exciting night and insightful night planned by the amazing youth ambassadors around the country. We'll be starting off with our keynote speaker, Samra Zafar, moving into some words from our sponsor, the RBC Foundation, followed by performances by youth speakers, and ending with a question and answer period for these speakers. As mentioned, we'll be muting the chat during presentations, so we are asking everyone to please make note of any questions that you have through any and all of tonight's speakers, and we'll move to the program and then pose a question and answer period at the end. We want to hear from you and engage in meaningful dialogue. So now it is my utmost pleasure to introduce tonight's keynote speakers, Samra Zafar. Samra is a best-selling author of her memoir, A Good Wife, Escaping the Life That I Never Chose, an award-winning international speaker, a human rights and mental health advocate. She was recently named as one of the top 100 most powerful women in Canada and is a proud Plan International Canada ambassador. Please give your attention to Samra, everyone. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. And I'm just so honored and thrilled to be here. And Cassandra, you were absolutely fantastic. Thanks for the warm and wonderful intro. It is actually one of my life's greatest honors to be an ambassador for Plan. And there were so many times in my life before when I used to read the signs of Because I'm a Girl and all the Plan campaigns, and I would resonate with those slogans so well, because I grew up in a way where I felt that I had to diminish myself and play small in order to fit in because I was a girl. So today life comes full circle, and to be here is just such a great honor. I want to start off by sharing one of my favorite quotes, and I'm all about quotes. I think all of you have learned that from me this week. And this is one of my favorite quotes by Mark Twain. The 2 most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. I was a young girl with very big dreams and very big ambitions. I wanted to go to school, have an education, change the world. And oftentimes I was told that my dreams and my goals and my ambitions are not valid because I was a girl, because of my gender. I grew up listening to a lot of mixed messages around what my rights were, around what I was supposed to do and not supposed to do. And it was a bit of a, envelope pusher. I was a bit of a rebel. So I used to push against those stereotypes. But little did I know that when I was 16, I would be married off to a stranger who I had no idea who he was. And he lived in a faraway country called Canada. So that's how I arrived here. As a child bride in a forced marriage at the age of 17, I became a teenage mom because I had no idea about birth control. No one talked to me about my reproductive rights. And then I was oppressed and abused and isolated and humiliated every single day for several years. I wasn't allowed to go to school. I had to fight my way out. I had to finish high school courses through distance learning and work as a babysitter at home to save every penny that I could to be able to start university. And when I finally did start university, it was because of that drive and that passion that one day I want to go to school, no matter what happens, no matter what roadblock there is, even in the dark days when I did not even think I could go on or did not even feel like I could live anymore. there was this tiny voice in my head that I want to go to school. I don't want to give up on my education. In fact, I used to actually stand in front of a mirror with a piece of paper rolled up in my hand like a fake degree and practice the graduation speech that I would one day deliver. And even when there was no hope of ever being able to go to school. It took me 10 years to fight that battle. And I finally was given permission to take one course and very strict instructions that don't talk to anyone, don't raise your hand in class, don't make friends with your fellow students, don't get noticed by your professors. So I would try my absolute best to be as invisible as possible. But I was being treated with kindness and respect for the very first time in my life about the very things that I was being humiliated and assaulted at home for. My ambitions, my goals, my dreams, my individuality, and just me as a person. And then I started wondering, why is this happening? Am I this rock star that everybody at school seems to think I am, or am I this worthless creature that doesn't deserve any kind of respect or admiration? And one day, as I was walking along on campus with these thoughts in my head, I came across a sign which had a bunch of questions on it. Do you feel intimidated? Like you've lost your voice, like you can't go on? And I answered yes to all of those questions. That was for the Health and Counseling Center. And it was like something was calling out to me. I went in and made an appointment. And a few days later, I was sitting across from a counselor who for the first time, anyone said to me, Samra, it's not your fault. No matter what you do not deserve to be abused. And that's the first time I heard the word abuse. It still took me another 2 years of getting courage, gaining knowledge, gaining awareness about my rights as a human being, as a woman, as a Canadian, to be able to break free from that marriage. And the biggest factor for that was that I didn't want my daughters to grow up thinking that being treated as less than human, as less than equal was okay, just because of their gender or for any reason. And when I eventually left and I worked 4 or 5 jobs and raising my kids and going to school full time. And eventually I graduated as the top student in the entire university. I won several awards and scholarships, and I got more success than I ever could have imagined in my wildest dreams. And then that question, why? Why did all of this happen to me? Why did I go through so much adversity? And why did I come out with so much success? What was that game changer? And I realized that game changer wasn't about how smart I was or how hardworking I was. Certainly those were factors. But it was about the community that I had around me, the people who lifted me up, the friends who watched my children when I went to class or court, my professors who spent hours motivating me when I didn't have the courage to believe in myself, my mentors who helped me make critical decisions to get me to where I am today. And I knew that I needed to do something to pay it forward. I just couldn't stay quiet. So I decided to share my story. And the first time my story got published was on my convocation day. So here I am in the morning getting my degree, a very emotional moment for me because I've waited for this thing for like so many years. And I get home and I log into Facebook, and all my social media was flooded with thousands and thousands of messages from women and girls all over the world, thanking me for breaking the silence, telling me how my story resonated with them, how it inspired them. And that is the day I found my why. That is the day I found why I'm in this world. I found my purpose. And that is what keeps me going today. Whether I do speeches all over the world, whether I write my book, or the book is now being turned into a TV series, or whatever I do, is that why, the passion, the drive that maybe there is one more life I can change. Maybe there is one more life I can touch. Maybe there's one more person I can inspire. And maybe there's a little bit more difference that I can create. And what I have learned through this journey, it's those little actions that you can create a very, very big difference for. Sometimes it's just a few kind words. Sometimes it's writing something that really, really you feel really passionate about, and you never know who reads it and whose life changes. I had a man once write to me an email from Pakistan, the city where I was born, in Karachi. And he wrote to me and said, I have a 17-year-old daughter who's supposed to get married next month. And I've decided to cancel her wedding and send her to school after I heard your story. And those are the messages that I get every single day, which keep me going. And that's why I know that I will never stop, and I'm just getting started. And today in this world, look at what's happening around us, right? Cassandra just did a beautiful talk about the atrocities against Indigenous people. Prior to that, we heard about how, and we're seeing all around us how Black people have been oppressed for decades and generations, and it infuriates us. And when we think of our own privilege, like I'm a woman of color, I'm able-bodied, but I'm able-bodied, and I know that I have privilege that I carry with me. I'm in a country in Canada where I have rights, and I know that so many millions and millions of women and girls around the world are struggling for basic rights to safety, dignity, and humanity, because they live in countries or in communities where patriarchy and misogyny is so ingrained. In fact, with Plan last year, I was fortunate enough to go to a trip to Zimbabwe, and we saw some of those things on the ground, and how child marriage is so prevalent, and how a lot of girls just going to school, walking to school, are at risk of being sexually harassed and molested, and teenage pregnancies are rampant. So we all carry some kind of privilege with us, but it is not, and that's not wrong. We can't deny the privilege that we have, but what's important is what we do with that privilege. How can we stand as strong allies? How do we create the safe space for our fellow humans and feel with them? How can we make sure that love and humanity prevails, truth prevails? And how can we make sure that love is louder than hate? So my challenge to all of you is to recognize that your voice matters. And your voice is powerful enough to create change, to actually change lives, to create life-changing impact on other people. And use that voice well. Call out injustice when you see it. Lean into compassion and humanity. Realize that what unites us as human beings is far, far, far greater and more powerful than anything that is supposed to divide us, whether it's the color of our skin, whether it's the gender that we identify with, or whether it's where we grew up, or where we come from, or what language we speak, or who we choose to love. Last year, my daughters and I were going for a weekly pizza night to Yonge and Dundas Square. And on the way back, my daughter stopped to hand over some leftover pizza to some homeless people who were sitting on the sidewalk. And one of them said, "Oh, thank you so much. It's my birthday today. This is a real treat." And next thing I know, both my daughters start singing happy birthday for this woman, for Michelle. And we are hugging her. We're just singing happy birthday so loudly. And my daughter said something to me that I'll always carry with me in my heart, that, "Mom, even if you can't solve someone's problem, even if you cannot do anything for them or give them anything, just acknowledge, smile, say a few kind words, because there is nothing worse than suffering alone and feeling that you're invisible and alone in your pain." So please make sure that voices are heard. We are strong allies. We're holding safe space for people who are suffering from racism, for girls who are being affected by gender-based violence, for anyone who is being affected in ways that they feel that they have to hide bits and pieces of themselves, that they have to diminish themselves, that they have to play small in order to feel accepted and loved. And find out, what is your why? What is it that sparks your soul? What is the fire in your belly that never ceases to burn? What is it that keeps you up at night? What is it that wakes you up in the morning? What is the legacy that you want to leave behind? What is that impact that you want to make, the difference that you want to make in this world? Uncover that why. It's within you. You just need to dig deep and find it, uncover it, and put all of your energies towards it, because that's how you will unlock your unique gifts and the purpose that you have in this world, to make a difference, to stand as strong allies, and to use your privilege to make this world a better place. And that is when you will be unstoppable, and the world will be a much better place for it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, your experiences, and your inspirational words with us, Samra. I know I really took a lot away just holding the privilege that I do, and I'll be reflecting on your words tonight, so thank you. We would like to take a minute to honor the sponsors of tonight's event, the RBC Foundation. In 2019, the RBC Foundation recognized that in order to address systemic barriers to success that women faced, they need to bring together 4 key organizations that were brought with women at various stages of life. They did that by donating a transformational gift of $2 million to Plan International Canada, the Canadian Women's Foundation, the Catalyst, and the YWCA of Canada. On behalf of everyone at Plan International Canada, I want to thank the RBC Foundation for your support and for being a committed partner in Plan International Canada's fight to achieve true gender equality in Canada and around the world. With that, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Valerie Short, Vice President of Corporate Culture and Executive Director of the RBC Foundation, to share a few words. Valerie is responsible for the development and execution of RBC's global corporate citizenship strategy, which is aligned to RBC's purpose to create and foster positive social, economic, and environmental impacts in the community. Her scope includes strategic philanthropy, employee engagement, impact measurement, corporate sustainability, social innovation, and sustainable finance. She was named as a member of Canada's Clean 16 leader in consulting sector, is a member of the Privy Council's Impact on Canada's Advisory Council, a founding member of Women for Nature, and is a mentor for an executive roster of young leaders. Please give your attention to Valerie, everyone. Thank you.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Cassandra. I have been inspired already by the many discussions and the introductory remarks. It was great also to see Samra. I enjoyed and have gotten to know her when she was also at RBC, and I also share a board with her. And every time I hear you, Samra, I'm inspired. So thank you again for being so open, honest, and authentic in terms of the way that you share your story. The other part I was going to share with the group, though, is that let's not confuse, we talk about being an ally, but let's not confuse allyship with really taking action. So I really enjoyed when you were asking us to think about taking a moment and thinking about our commitments, that we move from being an ally to think about what does that commitment look like and feel like in terms of taking action. So kind of shifting from allyship to actually taking action. And that's another key takeaway that I've taken here. So I remember, attending Plan Canada's Youth Summit around this time last year. I was inspired then by the many talented and motivated young people in the room that day, and have in fact stayed into contact with a number of them. So it was really inspirational to be there together. And who would have thought that the next time we would all be together, I'd be sitting in my living room or at my cottage. And boy, how have times changed. COVID-19 has turned our day-to-day interactions and routines upside down, and what has really now become a new normal, and a normal that we will continue to define. The disproportionate impact of the pandemic on our communities has brought to the forefront the pressing needs of our most vulnerable groups. The social distancing and self-isolation requirements have challenged the mental well-being of many Canadians, and in particular, young people. At the same time, the death of George Floyd in the US and the power of technology and social media have brought to the light the realities of racism around us that can no longer be overlooked. And despite these challenging circumstances, there is a real opportunity for us to define the new normal, one that acts on social economic disparities, fights racism, and builds truly inclusive communities. It's an opportunity for the young women with us this evening to be leaders today and tomorrow, and to shape, achieve, and demand this new normal. The leadership demonstrated by the chief medical officers in Canada in the public health response to the pandemic is one recent example of the success and importance of women in leadership. Diversity and inclusion is a core value at RBC, and we're committed to making our workplaces, culture, and communities inclusive and welcoming to all. And we're also looking at how we can do better in light of the anti-racism issues that we're looking to better understand today. We know there is tremendous power in diversity, and even more so in inclusion. And as we mentioned, we are proud to be a partner with Plan. We've done so on so many fronts, and it's much beyond a sponsorship. It's a true collaboration, co-creation around how do we learn, share, and grow in this area. As was mentioned, it's the first time that 4 leading women organizations have come together to support and promote the economic empowerment of women and girls in Canada. And we collectively work together to look at the systemic changes that need to be made in order to enable the full participation of young women and girls, including individuals who identify as non-binary at all leadership levels. At RBC, we believe that young people have the confidence, capabilities, and inspiration to reimagine a way that our country works and to chart a more prosperous and inclusive future for all. It's our commitment that we put into action when we launch Future Launch. It's a $500 million commitment over 10 years to help young people access meaningful employment through work experience, skills development, and networking while improving access to mental well-being supports. And we've had to pivot that program as well, as we've all learned through COVID-19. And I'd encourage you to check out Future Launch at home to get access to some of these programs from your living rooms or from wherever you are. Over the past week, young people from across Canada participated in Plan's Digital Youth Summit centered on the power of youth. You examined positionality, advocacy, activism, and allyship as social justice champions working on local and global issues. To the youth, I hope you were able to celebrate your successes of this past year while hearing from speakers and, most importantly, connecting with one another to develop new bonds and friendships. These networks are so important from each of you. And if there's one message that I can give and share with you from my personal experiences, learn to cultivate those networks, learn to grow with them. They will grow with you. They will allow you to access new opportunities, help you navigate this world. And once you have networks, be an ally and be a mentor to others and help them also develop networks. I'm inspired by your common passion for gender equality and international development. It fills me with great hope for a stronger Canada and with the optimism that equality on all fronts is in our future and that future is bright. I hope our paths cross again. I do miss not being with you and live, but I so look forward to being inspired once again by the speakers that we're going to hear today. So with that, please enjoy the rest of the program this evening and the amazing young women performers that will be taking the virtual stage. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, Valerie. We really appreciate your sponsorship and also you coming every year. It's always great to see you. I remember you there when I spoke a couple of years ago. So thank you again. So we're going to transition over to starting our speakers for the night. So first up, we have Cindy. Cindy was our participant in the Girls Belong Here program. Girls Belong Here is a Plan International Canada initiative that invites CEOs, presidents, leaders, and members of senior leadership from around the country to participate in a day-long seat share with female identifying youth from ages 14 to 24. Today, Cindy will be speaking about the power that comes from learning to believe in yourself and pushing through your fears to follow your passion. Over to you, Cindy.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking time from your busy schedules to come out and listen to me tonight. Before I begin, I first want to thank Denise for that beautiful and powerful piece that you spoke today. You brought me to tears. And secondly, hi, Valerie, it's nice to see you. As a proud RBCer, I echo your sentiments, and it's amazing to be part of an organization that supports such amazing and important topics that are dear to my heart. Tonight, I'll be reading to you a piece called The Journey to Finding Myself. I often grew up rarely believing in myself. I would look around at other people and constantly compare our worlds. I compared myself to my classmates, friends, and colleagues, and of course, people on social media. Even though this is a normal human practice, the direct results from my experience made me feel small and less valued. Eventually, this translated into me adopting self-sabotaging behaviors that limited my true potential. Fast forward to 2019, my self-sabotaging behaviors caught up with me. I was at a crossroad. I wanted to advance and be a successful Black woman, but I realized that the lies I had convinced myself for years were weighing me down from my true potential. To tell you the truth, I ran out of reasons to justify to myself why I couldn't be that person. I applied for my first leadership program that invested in young women representing every federal riding in Canada. A total of 338 women from all across Canada were selected. This leadership program was geared towards women interested in politics and preparing them for a potential life in politics. Fun fact, one of the women in my cohort went on to become an elected official in the 2019 federal elections. This experience forced me out of my comfort zone. Most importantly, it gave me the fuel and the drive that I much needed. I was finally not focused on others, but on myself. This opportunity was invaluable. Next, I became a CEO through the Girls Belong Here program that is facilitated by Plan International Canada. For a day, I took a seat as the CEO of Manulife, where I championed and advocated for gender equality. This was done alongside Roy Gorey, the CEO of Manulife, the other 364 days of the year. In summary, 2019 was a transformational year because I finally started believing in me. Most importantly, I became comfortable with saying, my name is Cindy, an advocate who fights for women's rights, specifically for Black women. These are difficult words to say because I understand it makes people uncomfortable. After this journey of proving myself, it was time for me to face a new hurdle. A fear of being exiled for staying true to my message. For me, fighting for the rights of Black women mean 1, amplifying their voices, 2, eradicating tokenism, 3, creating spaces and opportunity for investment, 4, facilitating spaces to thrive in leadership position. This will be my life's work. The world we live in, to fight for these rights ultimately means the risk of being exiled because people are not ready to do the work of becoming and being anti-racist. As humans, we're naturally social. And to come out of this fear, and the outcome of this fear coming true is being excluded from the social. This was my nightmare, especially for me, an extremely social person. For me, the need to overcome and push through this fear came on the day that my 5-year-old niece was excluded by her peers on the playground because of the color of her skin. That's when I knew no fear was worth the harm that comes from staying silent. This is when I kicked my work into high gear and really began to focus on amplifying the voices in my community. My work has consisted of me speaking up more and talking to local leaders, taking on new leadership positions wherever possible. In turn, I recently co-founded a group called Trace and Identity, a project that's specifically to deliver anti-racism workshop in Northern Ontario. However, I quickly learned one very important thing. You cannot do this work alone. Northern Ontario is in Toronto. It presents different problems and challenges. You don't have a community at your doorstep, and in Northern Ontario, the community of allies are still building. When you find yourself in a position of leadership, create spaces for those who bring diverse perspectives and ensure meaningful representation. Furthermore, when you find yourself in a position of leadership, let others rise with you. This is where the real work comes in. The key part is building your own capacity to work through all the emotions you may and will likely face as you're doing it, the emotional, mental, and physical labor that comes with any social justice work. In building capacity, it allows you to build the capacity of others. For the youth listening, 1, stop focusing on what others think. 2, jump out of your comfort zone. It will be scary, but it's worth it. 3, be an advocate for something that is close to your heart. And 4, inspire others to follow. Do all that, and I know you'll change the world.
Thank you so much for sharing your inspiring story, Cindy. We can all learn how to believe in ourselves from your words and your stories. So thank you so much for taking this space today. I know that took a lot. So next up, we'll be hearing from Ashwini. Ashwini is also an alumni of the Girls Belong Here program and a member of the Speakers Bureau. The Speakers Bureau provides an opportunity for young people from across Canada to be trained in public speaking, learn about Plan International Canada's work at home and abroad, and create positive change in their communities. Tonight, Ashwini will be saying a few words, followed by a poem related to the recent deaths of George Floyd and Regis Korchinski-Parkat and the Black Lives Matter movement. Over to you, Ashwini.
And just before we pass it over to Ashwini, I wanted to let everybody know that the content and conversations in Ashwini's presentation will address topics including certain forms of oppression, racism, and violence, specifically discussions of police brutality. Please take care of your needs and do what you see fit for yourself during this discussion topic. And if that means stepping away from your computer or muting your sound until the next presenter, please do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. If you have any questions or concerns now, please send a private message to any of the staff hosting this event, and we'll be happy to help you. Our aim is to make this presentation as accessible as possible. Over to you, Ashwini.
Thanks, Lena. Good evening. My name is Ashwini Selvakumaran, and my pronouns are she and her. I first want to commend the wonderful and passionate speakers we have heard so far. I'm here to continue my learning as an active ally, and I'm proud to be part of a collective group of empowered youth, a collective vision, and a collective voice. Today, I'd like to use my voice to discuss the importance of global solidarity in the youth community when it comes to being allies against anti-Black racism, systemic and institutional racism. As a member of the youth community, I implore our fellow peers in the wider need to be invested allies for Black, Indigenous people of color. Today, I will specifically discuss what it means to be an ally in the fight against anti-Black racism. According to Amnesty International, while Black Canadians now represent more than 3.5% of Canada's total population, they make up 15.6% of the visible minority. I often hear the word why echoed in our community. Why does this happen? Why does it continue to happen? And perhaps most pertinent of all, why should we care? The uncertainty and unrest that have resulted from George Floyd's murder over the past few weeks have illuminated a greater need to have a conversation on racism and has many people wondering what exactly it means to be an ally. Whether it is joining a Black Lives Matter protest to show support and solidarity or learning more about organizations that are against oppression, active allyship is taking place through various different pathways. As the rising generation, it is our responsibility to not only be informed, but fight against all blatant injustices. Our position as allies should be to amplify Black voices, not speaking for them nor over them, but recognizing whatever privilege we hold as non-Black people and use it to listen carefully and work to challenge anti-Blackness wherever we see it. Allyship depends on our openness and willingness to stand alongside communities and to create these avenues for pertinent change. For centuries, Black people have been fighting for a seat at the table, fighting discrimination and racism, and fighting for their lives. Until 1939, Black Canadians were subject to legislation that enforced segregation, where Canada's highest court concluded that racial discrimination was legally enforceable. In a 2016 consensus, Black Canadians are still far more likely than non-racialized Canadians and other visible minorities to be unemployed and continued victims of hate crimes. As a member of the South Asian community, I personally did not recognize the anti-Blackness that continued and the detrimental prejudices we held until I realized that change begins with myself and begins with self-reflection. The first step to being an ally is to read more about Black history and their Black experiences. As allies, we always need to be paying attention to when it is the right time to speak, but also when it is the appropriate time to learn, listen, and follow. It is important to confront our own privileges, to recognize systemic inequalities present, and be actively anti-racist. Speak up in support for Black friends, peers, colleagues, and employees. Respond always with compassion and action, as we are integral allies in the fight against racism. Active allyship entails taking steps to recognize the privilege and biases we hold, while supporting and working vigorously for freedom and justice for the Black, Indigenous people of color. The power of global solidarity lies in the fingertips of our generation. Solidarity, it is our tool for reducing inequality and social injustices in our world. We need to become well-versed in the history of Black people's ongoing fight against institutional racism. It is a necessity to cultivate an ongoing relationship with these communities, be dependable, and do our part for social justice. More than ever, we need to educate ourselves, stand up, and stand alongside Black communities. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "The ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by the bad people, but the silence over that by the good people. So let us all achieve global solidarity together." For every small action works towards dismantling systemic oppression. Every small action builds long-lasting change. Let us do our part for justice. To conclude my speech today, I would like to share a spoken word poem that inspired my own steps to active allyship in light of the recent events happening in our world. I watched in the news as George Floyd cried, "I can't breathe." I watched in shock as I heard him echo, "My neck hurts, everything hurts." I watched George Floyd plead. Now I can see his statement has become a rallying cry as masses march throughout the streets. Outstretched arms beg for acceptance, an end to racial injustice. Outstretched arms beg for a chance to breathe. Before COVID-19 contaminated our air, a deadly virus continued to extinguish Black lives. A vaccine can revolutionize the impact of this pandemic, but what about the impact of racism, which still survives? His death should not be simply listed, a priority of high concern. His perpetrators should not go walking free. No, his death should serve as a final wake-up call that we need to end this brutal history. So I asked myself, what can I do to play my part? I questioned, how can I contribute to tangible change? I decided to learn more about the 4 steps to allyship. I decided to welcome a new chapter, to turn the page. First comes action, showcasing support and solidarity within the Black community, recognizing the need to amplify their voice. To be an active ally, we must listen to the experiences of Black people, to understand their stories, their choice. The second L in ally, it stands for learning, educating ourselves on privilege and the Black community's persistent fight. However, we must also yield and not speak over or for them. Instead, we can build our understanding of the structures of oppression, working together to eliminate these from our sight. Though I realize that this change starts with me, to reflect on my own positionality that stands, to speak out whenever those behave in ways that contribute to injustices, recognizing my own biases and implications at hand. Let us educate ourselves to unlearn and listen simply to hear. We must stand in solidarity and commit to change, whether it be far or near. Say his name, Ahmaud Arbery. Say his name, George Floyd. Say their names, G. Korchinski Paquette, Breonna Taylor, and countless others. Feel your pain, hurt, and anger, and do not let grave injustices render void. I was inspired to write this spoken word by a powerful Black singer, Andra Day, and her song Rise Up, because together, we'll rise up, we'll rise like the day, we'll rise up, we'll rise unafraid, we'll rise up, and we'll do it 1,000 times again. So I hope today you can join me to rise up and challenge the fight against racism. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashwini. I always look forward to incorporating some sort of song within all of your presentations. So thank you so much, and for bringing up the much needed and timely conversation around allyship and racism. So we're moving on to our next speaker, who is Yassine. Yassine is part of the Young Experts Tech for Health, a council of young people from around the world who provide independent insight and counsel to digital transformation for universal health coverage 2030. A global coalition on leveraging digital innovation to achieve quality healthcare for all. Tonight, she will be speaking about the 3 principles that are key to ensuring international development work is sustainable. Let's go over to Yassine, everyone.
Thank you, Cassandra. I don't know where to start. This was such beautiful, powerful messages I heard, which really brought me to a very emotional state right now. So thank you for sharing such powerful messages. So apologies already if my voice is a bit shaky. So as Cassandra introduced me, my name is Yassine Yai, and I would like also to take this opportunity to thank Plan International Canada for allowing me and inviting me here to give, to share my voice. As Cassandra mentioned, I am one of the 12 members of the Young Expert Tech for Health group, which is a platform for young people to shape and guide the agenda toward achieving universal health coverage by 2030 through data and digital technologies. I'm originally from Dakar, Senegal, but today I'm joining you from Geneva, Switzerland, where I'm currently living and working. Today, I would like to discuss with you international development and what it will take for it to be sustainable. I believe that international development, for it to be sustainable, it must be centered and anchored around three principles: the principle of equity, inclusion, and equal partnership. Let's start with the principle of equity. We live in a world where most of us, and sadly, based on our social economic backgrounds, be it our race, gender, social groups, level of education, to name a few, we do not have the same access to resources. We do not have the same starting point in life. Therefore, I believe that the true aim of international development should be to establish a balance, meaning making sure that people are not giving what we think they need, but rather what they think they know they need to make their reality. Therefore, policies, fundings, and all other development mechanisms should be anchored in the principle. And the only way of making sure that we are equitable in our approaches is by ensuring that everyone is included in the process. As a result, the principle of inclusion is crucial to the sustainability of international development. One of the key measurements of success and sustainability for international development is people ownership. However, ownership comes from people being able to see and know that their needs and concerns are heard and addressed. The only way to make that happen is to ensure that everyone, and really everyone, especially those marginalized, those with the least power, and agencies are part of the discussion, but most importantly, part of the decision-making process. In other words, we need to be true to the idea of the Sustainable Development Goals, of leaving no one behind, by making sure that all concerned parties are represented and present at the table. And once at the table, it is crucial to guarantee that all those present are respected as equal partners. This leads us to the third principle of equal partnership. It is time now to really change the narrative of international development being one-sided interaction. If you want international development to be sustainable, we ought to move past the idea that it is about the North saving the South. By that, I mean it being about developed countries pouring resources and aid in developing countries in a way that they are the givers and leaders, while developing countries are solely receivers and have little say in the process. What this creates and has created is that the lack of ownership by those who are impacted by these aids, but it further accentuates already damaging stereotypes. For us to create sustainability, we need to see the North-South relationship as true partnership, where we each respect what the others bring at the table and make sure it's not about give and take, but rather an exchange and a cooperation. With these three principles in mind, I believe there's a lot we can all do to make international development successful and sustainable. For all of us here today, with all our privileges, be it our access to technology, to resources, higher education, or even access to power, it is our duty to create a platform through which we can exchange with those less privileged. But most importantly, platform through which those less privileged are able to share their voices and have them heard rather than being spoken for. Now more than ever before, we have the means to do so. But this will require for us to be ready to listen, to let those whose lives will be impacted, lead the way, and for us to be ready to provide our support and resources for them to meet their needs and make their life the one they dream of. To end, I believe that international development will only be successful and sustainable if centered around three key principles of equity, inclusion, and equal partnership. The message that I want to leave all of you here today is that we need to use our privileges to create a world where we all are our own agents, regardless of who we are, where we come from, or what we look like. We do have all the tools we need now, All we need to do is act. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that and for connecting with us from so far away today. It's really a pleasure, and to be able to hear your insights on international development is always a treat. So thank you so much for joining us today, Yassine. So next up, we have Isa, who is a member of the Speakers Bureau and has also taken part in Girls Belong Here. Isa will be sharing her thoughts on what she believes would make international development sustainable in the lives of children living in developing regions who are relentlessly deprived of their human rights. We can't wait to hear your insights, Isa. Please take it away.
Hello, thank you all for sharing your stories and for being so vulnerable and open. I know it's hard, but we all appreciate it so much. So here I go. 152 million children, aspiring students, curious and adventurous, ambitious, and once so full of life, until they were not. Adjectives replaced, memories forgotten, lives that are seen as less than. The World Vision estimates that there are 152 million victims of child labor across the globe, half of which are working in dirty, dangerous, and degrading jobs. 152 million. Why is it so easy to state this number without feeling the weight of the lives that are burdened by it? Let's think about this. Take a moment to picture a million little dots floating inside of your head. Can you see them? For me, this is kind of challenging. I have trouble contrasting the idea of 100, let alone a million of anything, against the stark emptiness of the background. And when I open my eyes, everything fades away. Now give each dot a face, a story, and a family, and you are left with the unimaginable reality that is the prevalence of child labor. I'm a strong believer in listening to and learning from people and their lived experiences, and the work that I do with my nonprofit highlights this. While each of us alone may not be able to reach out to 152 million children in need, we as a collective can at least try. So let's break this number down and develop a sense of scale. The average elementary school class has 30 students. This would equate to roughly 5.1 million classrooms filled with children who may never get to see inside of one. Have you ever been to a Raptors game? The Scotiabank Arena can seat over 20,000 people. So if the stadium were devoid of rowdy basketball fans like it is now, and instead replaced with children who are forced to remain silent in fear of abuse and mistreatment, we could fill over 7,600 stadiums with children who carry heart-wrenching tales of a bonded life, kids who've sacrificed their childhood to provide for their families before they could ever learn that they were the ones who needed to be provided to. The Conventions on the Rights of the Child, or the CRC, state that all children have the rights to protection, provision, participation, and to survive and develop. But what good are these rights if they're only reaching a few? This selective investment demonstrates that adults do not have the best interest of all children in mind, because if we did, we would hear the cries of 152 million children, and we would respond as if it were our own children in distress. We would be able to explain why the 12-year-old from Myanmar was forced to quit school and instead work in a garment factory to pay off her family's piling debts. She said she had always dreamed of becoming a nurse. That's a child, 12 years young, and already leaving her dreams in the past, because somewhere along the way, the adults in her life decided that it made sense for a child to resolve the debts that they never could. And somewhere along the way, she decided that her life could never be the same. And her story is just one case, just one floating dot out of 152 million. So really, what can be done? Children need to be provided with the educational opportunities to enrich their understanding on their basic human rights and to come to terms with the fact that these rights should have been delivered the moment they were. Employing children with resources rather than premature jobs is so critical because, as stated in reference to the Black Lives Matter movement, we are each personally responsible for creating a more ethical society than the one that we grew up in. These children and their education is a key to breaking the cycle of poverty for their future families. We as a collective society must track our impact. In the beginning of the 20th century, child labor laws were enacted in Canada, making this practice illegal in our country. If this were truly effective, how are 1,200 currently operating companies still importing goods with a high risk of having been produced through forced labor? Companies are not required to disclose their policies and practices, and as such, these risks, like the cries of 152 million children, fall through the cracks. But our actions can change this, and here's how. 1. Use your voice. Call for greater transparency in global supply chains. Call out companies that weave the innocence of young children in the products that they place on their shelves. 2. Use your resources. Educate all people on the rights of the child. Protection, provision, and participation are not privileges. They are basic human rights. And 3, use your actions. I feel a great privilege being able to work with some of the most incredible young people from around the globe almost every single day. My efforts lie in the area of giving back childhood to kids who have been deprived of their basic human rights due to some of the great injustices of our present world, including poverty, slavery, war, and abuse. To make international development truly sustainable, we must be willing to listen twice as often as we speak. In doing so, we have learned that for many families, child labor is not a choice, and for others, this perpetuating cycle of debt bondage is the only life that they know. So we make an active effort to collaborate with the families that we work with and offer resources and solutions on a case-by-case basis. Through my work with Isa's Teddy Bear Foundation, we have been able to fill elementary school classrooms with children who would otherwise be forced to be coerced into laborious conditions due to their family's financial instability. All in all, our message is quite simple. No child, not one, not two, not 152 million, should be taught to work before they learn to dream. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isa, for not only bringing up the 152 million children around the world, but also to talk about those actionable pieces. And I took notes, and I hope a couple other folks did too. So thank you so much for sharing that today. Next up, we will be viewing artwork from Carmen, who is a part of the Speakers Bureau. And Carmen will be touching upon today's reality of gender equality while also saying a few words. So everyone, please give your attention over to Carmen.
Thank you, Cass. Hi, everyone. My name is Carmen, and my pronouns are she/her. I would first like to thank everyone who has presented today. I am in awe of all of you for sharing your personal stories or speaking up for change. It was so inspiring, and I will be reflecting your words in my everyday life to make a safer and supportive environment in my community. Regardless of our background, we all deserve equal access, equal opportunities, and to be treated fairly and with respect. Unfortunately, that isn't our reality. Our reality is women and girls being held to a double standard. Criticism, pressure, and imposter syndrome put there by male counterparts and society as a whole. Our reality has engineered us to see a mother with her children, not a successful woman. So, represented in my picture is today's reality. The man is riding the escalator to success with ease, while the woman has to climb the unstable ladder. The ladder has missing steps, making it harder for her to reach success that may not be as high as the man's. The woman is also accompanied by her personal belongings and children, while the man has nothing. The balloons beside each machine also showcase a different state of achievement for men and women. The male figure's balloon is high and successful, while sadly, the pink balloon represents the frustration women feel when achieving their goals. Gender inequality not only affects the lives of individuals, but impacts economic growth, development, and prevents women from rising to their fullest potential. I love coding and math, and I want to be a girl in STEM. I want to empower other girls to realize the power they have to shatter the glass ceilings. Gender equality benefits everyone because we can accomplish so much more if half of the world's population had a seat at the table, allowing us to hear the stories, opinions, voices, diverse thoughts, and perspectives. The fight for gender equality is a long one, but we will continue to fight endlessly for a gender equal world. It is time to defy normal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carmen, for not only sharing your artwork, but your amazing words. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. So next up, we have Rupali. Rupali is a member of the Champions of Change Clubs, which is an avenue for youth to enact change on a local and global scale by raising awareness and fights for gender equality and girls' rights at schools and universities and colleges across campus. Tonight, Rupali will talk to us why it's critical to empower youth with a platform and the skills needed to enact change. Now it's over to you, Rupali.
Hi, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'd like to first thank all of the other inspiring youth speakers for sharing your powerful messages and stories with the rest of us. I've learned so much from each and every one of you. My name is Rupali Manik, and I'm an undergraduate science student at the University of Alberta and the co-president of a Champions of Change Club. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to talk about the power of youth. This is my first Storytellers Symposium, so I'm excited to be here. First, I'd like to share this quote by Robert Kennedy. I think that this quote really embodies what youth bring to the table. This world demands the qualities of youth, not a time of life, but a state of mind, a temper of the will, a quality of the imagination, a predominance of courage over timidity, of the appetite for adventure over the life of ease. Youth are catalysts for positive social change. It is critical that we empower and provide them with the skills that they need to practice advocacy. Among other mentors in my life, Plan has empowered me to enact change on issues that I'm passionate about. Last summer, I started a Champions of Change Club here at my university with a good friend of mine. I'm extremely lucky to be surrounded by a hardworking and passionate team of change-making youth. So I will also be sharing a couple of our initiatives from this past year. Youth have a unique perspective. Having grown up in a different environment with different resources, youth view the world through a unique lens. Young people perceive social injustice differently from adults, and their unique perspective frames social issues from angles never considered before. Our society can benefit and learn from the fresh perspective, optimism, and enthusiasm that youth bring to the table. One way my Champions of Change Club is amplifying the unique voice of youth is through our blog. We are committed to spreading awareness about a variety of topics from many different perspectives and voices. It is our hope that through this blog, we are able to provide youth on our campus and in our community with a platform to advocate for change. Youth are acutely aware of social injustices and want to make a difference. Youth are committed to making a difference in their communities and in the world at large. When passionate about an issue, youth use a variety of platforms to advocate for change. Many youth are advocating on social media, educating their friends and family, connecting with like-minded youth, and challenging systemic social issues. One issue my team is committed to tackling is widespread period poverty. As a woman originating from Gujarat and having observed this issue firsthand during trips to India, this is something very close to my heart. Recognizing that period poverty also exists within our local community, my team and I raised over $2,100 in our menstrual hygiene drive back in February to mirror Plan's global efforts. We used 100% of the proceeds to purchase tampons, diapers, and pads for vulnerable populations in downtown Edmonton, and also used this time to spread awareness about period poverty through our social media and our blog. Youth have creative and resilient minds. As extremely resourceful thinkers, youth propose innovative solutions to problems and advocate for change in creative and unique ways. The recent push in the Black Lives Matter movement is just one example of youth solidarity and their commitment to educating others and pushing for positive social change. One way my team is supporting the Black Lives Matter movement is by using our social media platforms to compile and share as many resources as possible. In our most recent blog post, we gathered an extensive list of books, podcasts, movies, TV shows, petitions, and nonprofit organizations, as well as some other ways to support the Black Lives Matter movement and learn more about systemic racism. However, we recognize that social change and dismantling systems of oppression is an ongoing feat, and we are committed to using our platform to help realize long-term and tangible change. So how can you empower youth? You can honor and listen to the unique voice of youth, give young people the opportunity to participate in meaningful ways. Don't be quick to judge or criticize their ideas. Exercise humility and be willing to accept new ideas from youth. Take time to understand and implement their ideas and suggestions. Give youth the tools they need to brainstorm, collaborate, problem solve, and reflect. Youth may not always succeed the first time, and if they do fail, you can help them learn how to succeed. It is important to remember that oftentimes the way to success is failure. You can mentor youth and encourage them to follow their passions. You can play a part in changing the narrative of inexperienced and troublemaking youth by sharing success stories of youth leadership. And you can encourage young people and let them know that their voice matters. And with that, I encourage you all to not only practice advocacy in your everyday lives, but to empower your peers and the youth in your communities. I truly believe that when we empower youth and provide them with a space to make change, that they will continue to astound us with what they can accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you so much for Polly, and also thank you on behalf of Plan International Canada for spreading all the work and being able to do everything that you do at your university. I know it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and as you talked about failures, a lot of failed opportunities too. So thank you for sharing those with us. And also I hope for other youth on the call, get involved with the Champions of Change Club, start your own, reach out to the youth empowerment team at Plan. They're always willing to help support on these endeavors, and you can do so much within your communities. So thank you so much for bringing that to our attention and highlighting that within the Storytellers Symposium this year. So next up, we'll be hearing a song from Chantel, who is a Speakers Bureau member and was a Change the Birth Story youth advocate alongside myself, and is an alumni of the Girls Belong Here initiative. Before sharing her piece, Chantel will be saying a few words about the power of youth. So everyone, please give your undivided attention to Chantel.
Hi everyone, I'm Chantel. I'm so thankful to be part of this year's Storyteller Symposium. I'm also so inspired and in awe of all of the amazing speakers before me, talking about their personal experiences, how they've supported or been a part of the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm also really sitting amongst just here like in awe because of all of the amazing inspiring stories that Summer and also Valerie have spoken about. So my story is about the power of youth and will be told through a song. Music is one of the many mediums that have been used for advocacy over the years. We can form emotional connections with music, promote awareness, and encourage activism about shaking the status quo and bridging things that may not have necessarily come before together. Creating positive change happens from intersectional advocacy. That means also we have to include working, listening, and sharing with youth, like you, me, our friends, and so forth. So I'm calling on all of us, yes, me, you, everyone you know, to celebrate, listen, encourage youth. We are powerful by being our multifaceted, intricate, and unique selves, and we have the platform and the spaces to do so. So thank you.
Please listen carefully. Please listen carefully. Please listen carefully.
Why you? Why you? Why me? What's with this? What? What are you going on about? What's going on? We are youth. We have, questions. We contain multitudes. We have answers. We desire for change, to create change, to welcome change. But youth. No, you. Why youth? Why us? We want to have a platform. We create our own platforms for change, for range, for systems to be changed, for gender equality to be the norm. In a world where equal access equals actual access. We need the power of a platform. We create our own platforms. This is when we can enact change for diversity, equality, and range. And you know why? So this way, we can enact change for diversity, equality, and bridge the ability to make decisions, enact decisions, to bring on decisions, to change the quote or ebb and flow of waves, of changes that are bound to happen when we youth. Why me? What's with this? What's going on? What are you going on with that? What's going on? We're youth. We have questions. We contain multitudes. We have answers. We have desire for change, to create change, to welcome change. Because we are youth. We have the power for change. We have the ideas to celebrate. We have ways to seek out change policies, ideas, advocacy for equality, equity, and non-conformity to status quo. Because we are you. We are youth. We have questions. We contain multitudes. We have answers. We desire for change, to create change, to welcome change. And you know why? Because we're you.
Thank you so much for that amazing video, Chantel. I am taken aback by that. Thank you. And I really hope that the words and not only the amazing graphics speak to folks today. Thank you so much for that. So speaking up next is Arian, who is a Speakers Bureau member. Tonight, she will be sharing a graphic design exhibit called We All Win. And we'll be discussing how society as a whole benefits when we invest in gender equality. So over to Arian, everyone. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much, Cass, for that great introduction. My piece titled, We All Win, is a diverse representation of my peers all fighting for gender equality. Even though I couldn't put all of the women in the world in my piece, I wanted to show a sample of girls and women who are not usually in the spotlight. The design is primarily created with circles, with a bright circle of color behind the character portraying a spotlight. And that's because I enjoy straightforward minimal design, so the message is clear. I also wanted to make it clear, diversity and color are positives in my piece. Now, we are all aware that if gender equality is made top priority in corporations and the government, our society would greatly benefit. We would all win. We clearly see when women are put into leadership roles, the community grows stronger. For example, New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has shown a tremendous amount of leadership during the COVID-19 outbreak in her country, and they now have a 98% recovery rate. She, and I quote, may be the most effective leader on the planet on the way that she handled the pandemic, according to the Atlantic News. Regardless of whether society benefits from women taking a lead or having a stronger voice,
I don't know.
we still deserve equality because it is a human right. Who gets equality should not be a controversial issue. I want the characters in my piece to have a bold opinion about equality, just as bold and fierce as their red lip. So I hope you guys enjoyed my graphic design, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to show my work at this year's Speakers Bureau, or at this year's Storyteller Symposium. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Arian. That was a beautiful graphic design. And also it is true that we all win. And thank you so much for your time and your effort today to be coming and sharing all of that with you. I know it's a little intimidating to show artwork sometimes, and it was absolutely beautiful. So thank you. So last but absolutely not least, we have Rhea, who is both part of the Speakers Bureau and the Champions of Change Clubs. Tonight, Rhea will be discussing the stigma around menstruation that she has witnessed firsthand at her university. So over to you, Rhea.
Thank you, Cass, for such a great introduction. Before I begin, I just want to acknowledge how amazing every speaker and every artwork that was shared tonight was. Wow, just have to give you guys like a round of applause. Wow, it's just amazing. And just like Cass said, I'm just going to talk about my club that I started at my university and one of my personal favorite experiences from that club. So, menstruation, menses, period. These are words, if you ask me to say out loud in front of a crowd like this, even last year, I would have been too shy to say. Why? I grew up, like many other menstruators across the globe, thinking that menstruation was a symbol of shame and cleanliness and disgust. However, as a menstruator, I never understood how something so natural, such as a period, could be deemed as shameful. I never understood how my school would praise gender equality, but made girls skip classes when they hit their period unexpectedly because our school did not provide us with basic necessities, such as period products. I never understood how some of my family members would push me to pursue a quality education, yet fail to educate me on my own body. And most importantly, I never understood myself and what was happening to me every month. Menstruation is a silent injustice. Not only is it a problem for women and girls, but menstruators of all genders and identities. Because of the stigma, many menstruators across the globe do not have the proper education or body literacy, nor do they have a welcoming environment in which they can ask for a pad or tampon. Today, I will be discussing that in order to achieve a gender equal world, menstruators need to be given the respect and dignity that has been taken away from them for too long. After high school, I felt empowered to mobilize and create a Champions of Change Club at my university this past year. I wanted to finally address the issue of period poverty and the period stigma within my community because I felt an apparent underrepresentation of the issue. Just this past March, my club and I launched our Period Station project. We set up 4 boxes in 4 different offices with quality pads and tampons in varying sizes and brands. We kept track of the usage of each station so we could later present this data and show the demand of period products to the administration. However, we realized that part of the stigma was that non-menstruators were not involved in the conversation. So we reached out to a local graphic designer to create an informational poster about menstruation that we then taped around the hallways and in the boys, girls, and neutral washrooms. And just this small act of taping these posters around sparked a positive reaction and a conversation with the staff and student body about menstrual equity. Later, we were invited by several local newscasts to talk about period poverty and the period stigma on television and features in articles to be recognized provincially. But we knew we had to take it one step further. Because yes, it's awesome that menstruation was finally being represented and heard, but now we needed to be listened to. We knew that in the long run, real systemic change needed to happen in order for us to progress to a more gender equal world. As we move forward with our project, we demanded our university to implement permanent dispensers in the washrooms. Because like many other systems in schools across Canada, the only way you can access period products were through the school office or nurse. However, this current system only perpetuates the idea of shame and secrecy. Why do menstruators have to walk all the way across the school in order to attain a pad or tampon? It takes away their dignity, having to walk with the fear of staining their pants. Period products are as much of a necessity as toilet paper. So we need to be supplying these products at the same level. For almost 6 months, my club had meetings upon meetings with the university custodial services and with the administration to demand an implementation of period products in the washrooms. After those 6 months, The university committed to implementing 12 dispensers of free period products, and my university became one of the first in my province to do so. For once, we were listened to. So, what can you do? And how do you fit into this menstrual movement? Well, in order for real progress to be made for gender equality, we need to acknowledge the existence of periods. Whether you menstruate or not, everyone needs to start normalizing periods. So let's include periods in our conversations. Let's start holding our pad or tampon in our hands instead of up our sleeve or in our pockets on our way to the washroom. Let's demand for products to be available in washrooms. With the ongoing pandemic, the stigma and the problem of period poverty is exacerbated. People are hoarding necessities, and many menstruators are stuck in a home where the very notion of a period is silenced. Institutions where low-income menstruators turn to for access to period products are either underfunded or completely shut down because of the pandemic. But periods don't stop for pandemics. Menstruation is a natural biological process, and it needs to be treated that way in order for gender equality to be a reality. So, no more secrets. I menstruate. Period. Thank you.
That was an amazing ending. Thank you so much. That whole thing was amazing, but especially the ending. Thank you so much for sharing all of that and all the work that you're doing at your school. I know it takes a lot of effort and time and hours and energy, and a lot of times felt by that admin pressure. So thank you so much for enduring all of that and working for your communities. So now that concludes the speaking portion of this event. As stated earlier, we'll move on to the question and answer period. So this is an opportunity for audience members to be able to use the raise hand function on Zoom to be able to ask questions. Alternatively, you're also able to put your questions into the chat and indicate which speaker, or for any speaker for the question who it's intended for. Speakers, if you could please turn on your cameras or keep them on, that would be great. And for audience members who have their cameras on, if you don't mind turning them off for right now, unless you do want to ask your question on your own. Then you can turn them on at that time. Questions may be also asked through the live chat function on the YouTube live stream if you're joining us from there. So, can we get a big round of appreciation for our fantastic speakers? So everyone, please show us some love in the chat. Please show us some questions. I'm super excited to see what everyone has to say. So audience, if you want to use that gallery view on Zoom so you're able to see everyone, that would be great. Other than that, we're waiting to see any questions that are coming through. So Lena, what is the first one?
All right. Just echoing what everybody has said tonight, thank you so much for your amazing, amazing presentations. The first question is coming from Jules, Jules would like to know, and this is a question for the whole group, so anybody that wants, any one of you that wants to like speak up, just unmute your mic and go for it. So Jules is asking, does speaking up about something you're passionate about come easy to you, and how come?
Hi, Jules. Thank you for your question. For me, speaking up about something I'm passionate about hasn't always come easy to me. I think that a lot of times we're afraid of what other people might think, if people will agree or disagree with us. But like Samra mentioned, I've kind of come to the realization that if I'm talking about something that I'm passionate about, and even if I can make a change for one person, that it's worth it. And so that's kind of what's inspired me to actually speak up.
Yeah, I would say jumping off of Rupali's wonderful point, I was always told by my dad these words that if you can make a difference in at least one person's life, you are creating an avenue for them to instigate that difference and passion you have transferred into another person's life. It's like a chain reaction, you know? And those were words that I always kept in my mind and my heart when I entered university 2 years ago, because I believe, you know, if you do something that you are so passionate about and you really are able to transfer and showcase these passions to the other youth communities, and not even just youth, but all communities, they are really able to see and follow in those passions and create and instigate change on their own. And I think that's really what inspires me and keeps me going. And while it might not always be easy, it is necessary. And you'll see that momentum when it happens, and you'll be able to capitalize on it. And it makes you feel that you are really being a catalyst for change.
And just to add on that, I think it's, as everybody said, it's definitely not easy to speak up, especially in the world where people judge you based on what you say. And I think, at least for me, I think as a woman, I've just been, you know, vocal about certain things, about gender equality, about feminism. And I think you get the feedback of like, oh, you're so emotional, you're getting emotional, but you're really speaking out of passion. And I think it comes with time and maturity, and really getting, you know, understanding that what you're saying is important to you, and regardless of what other people are saying, this is what you believe in, and this is your message to the world, and just sticking with that regardless of what people say. And one day you will have, you know, people who will listen to you, and you know, that's it. You go from there. But just don't listen to people. Don't let people hold you down, and just stay true to yourself, no matter how hard it is.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that first question, Jules, and for all of you that that answered that. So our next question comes from Nawal. This is a question for Cindy. Cindy, your speech was so heartfelt and really showcased how deeply ingrained racism is in today's society. How do you manage to maintain optimism during such trying times?
Honestly, it's been hard. I'm a naturally happy and joyful person, and last week was really not that. It was a really trying week. I found myself often crying and grieving people that I've never met, nevertheless, for the third and fourth time this month. So it was a lot of emotions, and I think it was allowing myself to feel those moments and to allow myself to be sad. And then turning to my community, I'm really happy that I have a group of cousins, and we were all able to jump on the call, and there's about 6 of us, and we're all Black women. And we were all sharing what we were feeling, and we were all scattered all through Canada. And it was really powerful, and it broke my heart at the same time how we all were feeling the same thing despite being in separate rooms. But really, it was unloading that and allowing myself to go through all the emotions. And then I kicked it into high gear to allow myself to have hope for the future. For me, if I can't laugh in one day, then what's the point of living? So I really do allow myself to feel more than just happiness, because I recognize you can't be happy the whole time. But really, the answer is hope. I have to have hope. I have to be able to smile, because we don't know how long we'll be on this world, but I do deserve to be here, and I'm going to be happy when I'm here.
Thank you so much for that, Cindy, that heartfelt response. And I know there's several people giving you snaps right now. And the next question I have is, I think this is, so this is for anyone who was talking about doing advocacy work specifically in a university setting. This question comes from Aloka. Aloka's asking for any tips on how to approach school administration and have productive discussions. And Aloka also says thank you.
I think I can jump right in because I kind of touched on this in my speech. So yeah, it's been really challenging for myself personally to connect with the administration because it was my first year of university and I had no idea where like half my classes were. So just like figuring out like who was in charge and in like what capacity. I think just narrowing down because everyone in the administration is specialized in one certain thing on campus. So just starting off from the bottom up, starting with like the most specialized and then going all the way to the president is like I think I found like really key is just working from the bottom up and just not taking no for an answer, because what I found in these discussions was that the university administration, whether they're doing it on purpose or not, they would talk about like what they're already doing and then say, oh yeah, we've done enough, but then you have to constantly prove that that is not enough and you won't take no for an answer. And then creating that student pressure, right? So it's like creating a club or creating an organization that has like numbers matter. So it's like about creating that majority and then that pressure. So then they realize that, hey, this is an issue and everyone cares about this. So you need to get on board with this. So I think those, if that answers your question, if you have any more, you can definitely just ask me in the chat. So yeah.
And Rupali, I know you've done quite a bit of work on a university campus. Did you want to add anything?
Sure, I can jump in. So I think one thing that my group has done a lot this year is finding professors that are really supportive of what we're doing. And that's been helpful because they have spread our message to class sizes of 200-300 people. And it's really spread awareness that way. So I would say if there's a professor that you really resonate with and someone that you think will understand what you're doing and be willing to share your message, definitely approach them and don't be shy. And that's just a really good way to spread awareness about some of these issues that are happening on our campus.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. So the next question that I have comes from Alex. Alex is asking, and this is a question for the whole group, what was the first step you took to becoming an advocate? Do you remember the first action you took?
I think for me, if I could share, it was honestly really saying what I truly believed. Often I'm a very passionate person and I fear coming across as that angry Black woman or that emotional woman, all the different things people will use to counter us. But I think for me was just, it gets to a point where you just don't care. And you just have to say something, because not saying anything at all is just, it's so much worse.
Would anybody else like to jump in?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think for me, there was no really like moment where I was just like, okay, I am moving into the advocacy world. I think it was just part of who I was and part of the reality I was in. And I think, as Cindy said, I think when you grew up, you're witnessing certain inequalities, certain action, it becomes normal to just not stay quiet. It becomes normal for you to speak up. And obviously, I understand not everybody has the ability to do so, or even the circumstances or the power to do so. But I think for me, it was just a matter of being vocal about these things and making sure that, as I said earlier, that my privileges, I use them, because just being from Senegal, just being a woman, I have a privilege that a lot of young women in my country don't have. So I think for me, not being an advocate wasn't an option. It would just be really slapping in the face those who don't have the privilege that I have. So it ended up being just about, for me, just laying the foundation, speaking up for myself, but it's all allowing, others to be able to see themselves in me and being able to say, okay, she's doing it, then I can also do it. And that's how, I end up in this year.
I'm going to jump on Yassine's point there, or a point that she raised earlier about not really worrying what other people think about what you're doing. Because if you have like the idea in your head and all you need are the resources, I feel like everything kind of falls into place. I was so caught up with one I was first getting started with my nonprofit, what other people thought. People would constantly label me as a shy kid, not knowing that I had always aspired to be a public speaker. And I kind of kept that on the back burner, but I also didn't let it eat away at my confidence. I justified it by telling myself that all this time that I'm spending, not always like being the one to shout out an answer first or anything like that. This time I'm spending being introspective and learning from myself. And I think that's been really beneficial in my advocacy work because it's allowed me to create these really meaningful connections with not only the people that I work with, but also just like incredible youth, like this group of amazing young people here. And yeah, so not allowing other people to write your narrative is so critical, and I learned that the hard way. I spent a lot of years worrying, but if you can take that piece of advice, I feel like you have a little bit of a shortcut. Yeah, all you need is the confidence and you'll kill it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, all of you, for sharing. The next question is for Chantel. It's kind of a double question, so I'm going to combine a couple that were asked. And so could you please tell us about the inspiration behind the music piece and if you've ever composed pieces like that before?
Thank you so much, Lena. So I haven't really composed stuff like that before. I've downloaded some like computer editing software programs recently because I really like YouTube, like many of you, and I think it's a great platform. So I was like interested to see how do you do that, because I think that a first step into, I guess, being more aware and more educated is to try it yourself. Like it depends on the situation, of course, but in this way I could. So I tried to write a poem first, or like more so on the spoken word side, because I just felt that it would be a better representation of how I feel about the topic. And I wrote about the power of youth because I am a youth person, and the Youth Summit is a great collective of youth voices. A lot of the times we want platforms to speak on. It's frustrating when other people perhaps won't take us as seriously. So I try to channel some of those feelings into the poem. But then I realized a lot of the time, like youth here, like Isa with her Teddy Bear Foundation, and a lot of you with your Champions of Change clubs, and also just youth advocates in general, we already create our own platforms when there aren't any platforms. So I thought that I would try to show that it's not like a single story. It's really multifaceted, and all of us have perhaps a way to tell our story, even if we don't necessarily know it. And music was my way. I'm a music student, and we usually don't do this stuff, but I've been trying to learn how to try to use different mediums to come together. And I think that's about all, but it's really cool because it's my first time doing something of this project. And I realized kind of off topic, but kind of interesting, is that I realized my own gender-based like implications about like this type of, I guess, musical creation thing. Usually some of my favorite recording artists who do more spoken word, not rap, but like spoken word music, are male artists, and they're the ones who generally dominate the charts. So at the beginning, I was trying to make my voice sound more masculine, even though, I mean, that's not my story. That's not who I am in that context. So I realized that no, if the voice modulation apps to make me sound lower will not work, well then let's reframe, let's figure out my mindset about how to approach it. So I guess I gained sort of confidence from doing this project because I realized that gender equality must also start from yourself. So I think this is a good step for me to keep on trying to change my mindset, shift the narrative in my usual music courses.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So this is going to be our last question, and I'm going to put this to all the speakers. So this came from Rhea in the chat, and Rhea is asking if you folks wouldn't mind sharing one short highlight from your years of advocacy and activism.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right, Denise here. The Girls Belong Here program for me was definitely a huge highlight. I did my seat share at Telefilm, and going in as a film student, I was really nervous, but it was an opportunity that really probably changed my life. I have those connections I made through there, and sitting with an amazing woman in leadership, Krista Dickinson, and learning about her path and how she got to where she is. It kind of demystified the whole idea of like what being in power looks like, and meeting these people, speaking to them about their path and everything. I realized that I could grow up to be an executive at an organization, and it wasn't something I ever considered. So I think that was probably the highlight of my advocacy so far.
I think for me, the highlight of my advocacy journey happened this past year in 2019. So I attend the University of Toronto St. George campus, and unfortunately, there is a history with poor mental health issues at the campus. And we really wanted to do something to establish some sort of collective where we were really able to discuss the mental health issues that were so pertinent to students' well-being and continued success. So at first, we tried to lobby, for student support, and we found it quite difficult. So we decided to establish a tri-campus collective called U of Thrive. And we honestly found it to be a very fulfilling experience, because a lot of students came to us and said they were looking for a hub where they could experience and express these stories and collaborate with other students for shared pathways to success. So we're still continuing that initiative today. And honestly, it's just really amazing because it gives an opportunity for students to come together, and it really gives them a platform for their voices to be elevated, which is what we're really trying to do at my university.
I can go. So for me, like I've already mentioned kind of in my speech, one of my highlights would have to be the implementation of the dispensers in my school. But other than that, like what I do with my advocacy and like my advocacy journey is always to like create an inclusive platform and to always like inspire others. And I would say one of my true highlights from this club, like just this past year, was a high school student reaching out on our Instagram and saying that she was super inspired by our advocacy, that she talked to her student council at her high school and got period products to be dispensed at her school. So I thought that was really cool. Just like planting those seeds and getting people inspired really like has a really close place in my heart. So yeah.
If I may go next. Not to sound too corny, but I think one of the highlights of my advocacy would be today. And the reason why is that I had invited my young cousins who live in Texas, who are age 16 and 17, to watch us today. And as we were talking, I was sharing text messages with them and just hearing their thoughts and how exciting they are. This is their first time even, participating in an event like that, and just hearing them being so excited about, hearing all of us, and just looking forward to researching more and how they can be involved and how they can educate themselves. I think, to me, that shows, the power of what we're doing today and the power of advocacy and how we really can impact people by just, having such meetings, things like this, how we can chat between us and inspire other people to join this movement and be advocates.
All right, well, if that's everybody, then I am going to hand this back to Cass.
Thank you, everyone, for those thoughtful answers and for everyone who submitted a question. We always enjoy having the dialogue. And unfortunately, that brings us to the end of our event tonight. I want to be able to thank all 10 of our incredible youth speakers, everyone in the audience for joining us, our keynote speaker, Samra Zafar, and of course, the RBC Foundation for sponsoring our event tonight. Tonight, our speakers spoke about a handful of Plan International Canada's youth programs, but if you want to learn more about the programs that we talked about tonight and others, you can always visit our website at plancanada.ca. I also saw a message in the chat from Jules reminding folks that if you're interested in the Girls Belong Here program, that applications will be coming up soon in the summer, so please keep an eye out for that. So that is all from us. So thank you everyone for a wonderful evening. We hope to see you all again at next year's Storytellers Symposium. Thank you so much, everyone.